prestigious Russian mathematician who's written textbooks. He's a full member of the Academy of Sciences in Russia. He's a professor at Moscow State University. His name's Anatoly Fomenko, and he spent his life going through documents, and he proves undeniably that all of our ancient history, whether it's ancient Greece, whether it's the birth of Jesus, whether it's Rome, it's all based on events that happened in the Middle Ages, and it was artificially extended in the 1500s by Jesuit monks under the Holy Roman Empire.
Hey, I'm here with the lovely Trouble again. Lots of talks lately, isn't it? Trouble keeps bringing these videos to me, and I kind of agree with what these people say, Trouble, because I just wanted to say, because obviously Trouble's got her own version of it, but I looked up the War of the Roses, and that's just before Edward IV, and then it goes Henry VII, Henry VIII, and then Elizabeth I, so it's 1500s. And no matter when you look at the War of the Roses, everybody has got a different version of it, and all these people come and I just can't even work it out. It's just so complicated. It's a bit like having a rhyme, and it's like a film in 5 minutes. Whoever explains it, there's so many people brought in, and you're like, you can't work out, because that's when the red dragon and the white dragon was there. Well, griffins, whatever they were. And so I know something happened then, and this is what they're saying. At exactly the same time, when the Romans shouldn't have even been there. And explain a bit more, Trouble.
Yeah, well, they're looking into Tartaria, which is something not many people have heard of, but there are maps and with Tartaria on it, and so they think it was a big empire that ruled most of the world, not all of the world, but most of the world. And then something happened, and they had a civil war, basically. And the version that these guys are talking about is that basically Jesus Christ happened in the 1600s or somewhere around there, and it split Tartaria into two halves. It was like the old royals versus the new ones, and then they had some sort of catastrophe.
When was that? When was that roughly, Trouble?
Well, they reckon somewhere between the 1600s and something definitely happened around the 1600s, and that all history before then is fake, and it's just a repeat story everywhere you look. And they were bringing up a couple of guys that had actually published books. One was from Russia, and he's published like 12 or 13 books on the topic. And he
I just explained that what we're talking about is, because I didn't do this, this is the foil hat with Sam Tripoli. So
Tripoli.
That's Tripoli.
Yeah, he's a comedian in America.
What, the guy with the beard?
The guy on the left top, yeah, I think he's got a bit of fluff happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all comedians, and they're sick of the comedian. That they know they're into all the conspiracies, so they know all the shit that's going on, and they've just sort of done with that world, and so yeah, now they're just making videos.
Yeah, I also was trying to tell you that this time where the Ottoman Empire is taking over and doing all that, we've got the Barbary ships going out independently, where in a place that would have been Tartaria or the Ottoman Empire, and then the Ottoman Empire didn't finish till 1925, so maybe maybe the Ottoman Empire is the split away. But it's just that how can you have the Ottoman Empire and Tartaria, and we were ruling the waves, and the Barbary ships were out taking everybody to slaves? So it just does not add up. So I know that something happened in the 1500s, I reckon.
I'm not an expert on history, but I think Tartaria, they're basically saying like the hub of Tartaria was Russia, was somewhere near Moscow.
Because there is a wall. There is a wall across the world. You've got the wall of China, but there is a wall, and artists found bits of it.
Well, yeah, these guys are like me. They think that this stuff is geopolymer. They reckon the Great Wall of China was only built around, the 1600s to the 1800s. Same with the pyramids. They don't think the pyramids are as old, or they think the Egyptians are the last of the Tartarians. And the Tartarian was a big empire, so it had giants as well as the elongated skulls, and it had all different kinds of human things.
Oh.
Yeah. And they also are thinking that there was a great underground railway. In fact, they know they were, even in Pompeii, they were saying that Pompeii only happened in the 1600s because they found maps with Pompeii still on it in the 1600s. And so they think they had this great underground railway, and it was also a river down there, and you could get fresh water, and that's what collapsed when whatever catastrophe happened. It's really interesting though.
Wow.
Because they pack a lot into that.
If we've got a train that went underground at that stage, what the hell was this place like then?
Well, they've got some paperwork where a king commissioned an underwater canal. That's the word, a canal. So it might not have been a train, but I picture underneath the ground there was a great world all around Earth, right? And then I guess when things crashed, then it was a race between the two halves to see who could conquer most land and become the ruling group again.
Well, Victoria, she passed over ruling England to a government. So that happened in 1830 something. Just as she moves into Buckingham, so she gets Buckingham Palace, but she loses the country, and you know the rest, all India and all that gets broken up. We don't have any. Whatever we did, we don't even know if any of that's true, do we?
Because all the royals, I don't know. I get a bit confused between the royals and the banking elite.
Well, they're all the same people.
Yeah.
They're all the same people. And, you know, like, right at the mind of my video to High Impact, I suddenly realised that I could see, in fact, I said he was Prince, but he's the King of Holland. And he plays Trump sometimes, as well as Martin Sheen, as well as the rest of them. Oh. It's unbelievable,
Yeah.
really. So do you want me to, should we play a little bit more then, Trouble?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they talk about, I've got to get the name of this German guy that's written all these books about Tartaria, about the fake history. I don't know if he's written about Tartaria. And the other guy, so.
Okay, we will get on to the next bit. Hang on then.
Roman Empire.
Okay, you got Jesuits. You're hitting all my boxes. He's mentioned Jesus. That's all of it. So, okay, so let's start in this thing. And listen, I'm all about this action. So you're telling me that anything that happened before the 1500s that we have learned in history is not real?
Yeah, so basically, there's no original documents that precede 900 AD. So everything from 900 AD and back, there are no actual original manuscripts or documents. Everything we know about ancient Greece, ancient Rome, BC, Egypt is written in the Middle Ages and basically takes events that happened in the Middle Ages and essentially duplicates those events and pushes them back into time. So you create an 1100-year gap of time and you fill it in with stories from the Middle Ages with different names, different regions, different geography. And you have to remember at the time, the monks and the Jesuit order, they controlled information, man. No one other than the kings, royalty, the priest class, they're the ones who got it. They wrote their own history. The average layman couldn't even speak, you know, it wasn't like there was a newspaper and you could go read the newspaper. All the information you learned about your history was given to you by the church. And so that's where we started digging into like our original history. And we found this guy, Joseph Scaliger, who was a French Jesuit monk who basically in the 1500s created what we know as 0 AD, the birth of Christ. And 33 to 36 years later, he's crucified, right? And that sets the timeline that we still to this day follow. So everyone looks at 0 and then goes back. But in reality, this Fomenko, this scientist that who's written 7 volumes of this, and he spent 20 years of his life, he basically proved through the use of astronomy and astronomical forensics that Jesus, for example, was born in 1152 AD, according to the star Bethlehem, where it was in the sky at the time. He could reverse engineer now with an algorithm and with, you know, software that he developed to actually look at the lunar eclipses, the solar eclipses, all the things that were recorded in ancient books, he could cross-reference with an actual, we know where the moon is going to be. Exactly. Today, we know when a lunar event's going to happen down to the second. And he used that same knowledge today to actually backdate and go back and say, wait a minute, Jesus, there's no 0 AD. It's 1152 is when the Star of Bethlehem was in the sky in this location, indicating the birth of Jesus.
It was the Crab Nebula going supernova, followed by 33 years later by a full eclipse, which the crucifixion was often accompanied by an eclipse in the Gospels. So that 33-year separates happened only at 1152 through 1185.
Yeah.
So how do you interact with human beings, like knowing this kind of knowledge? Because I know little things and it's hard for me to function in society. But when you're saying that there's no history,
Try telling somebody the Roman Empire never happened and see how they take it.
okay, dude, I'm in on this. So are you trying to say that you believe everything started at this time, or the history we know was
the written record that we have to go off of is only 1,000 years old?
Okay, but before that, a whole bunch of stuff happened, and we've been lied to about what happened.
Yeah, Graham Hancock and stuff, and his whole theory about the cycles of civilization. We're totally into that, and we think Tartaria got its origins from a previous cycle of civilization. So we're just talking about this cycle of civilization rising from the cataclysm that whatever knocked the last civilization down.
So no historical event happened more than 1,000 years ago that is on record. That's what you're saying.
As far as the buildings, the constructions, it's a whole different story. There's lots of weird stuff out there that's probably way older.
How about the burning? How about the burning of the Library of Alexandria? Because the Romans burned that. Do you think that there was some?
It's a fake story. It's probably based off several things in Eastern Europe. Like a lot of stuff was taken from the schism of Tartaria and sort of the Holy Roman Empire, and it was moved all over the world later. So there probably wasn't a library in Alexandria.
Hey, I just wanted to show you that that's the name of the Hangout, and that's the channel that you go to watch this Hangout. I just put a little bit in, but yeah, it makes sense that nothing is like they said it was, and that there's 1,000 years added on. A lot of people noticed it on the maps where there used to be like an eye, and then that eye turned into a 1. And so that makes sense why there are these maps, because they're 400 or 500 years, not 1,500 years, or even older.
Yeah, and like.
But you know what, Trouble? He who wins writes the history, so you'll never know whether it's this barbarian lot in right now who've done it, or whether it was a natural thing or whatever, because you can never tell now, because they've written this history, and we know that they're changing it regularly. And like ground zero, which is what they did with 9/11. It used to say on a point of a nuclear explosion, but you can't find those in the dictionary now. They've changed it, and so that's what they've done. So what you thought you knew as history and information years ago has all been changed now, and a lot of stuff's been taken out. Just now, let alone then.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted. Just saying, it's just quite incredible that suddenly. How do you reckon they? Because obviously you've watched all the Hangout. How do you reckon they found all this information then? Because it's a bit. You can't just say, oh well, like Tartaria was in 11 something without. How did they find their information? Do you remember?
It's from this guy that wrote a book in Germany. He was a mathematician, and he must have spotted the patterns in the numbers.
Oh, right, we heard that bit when he reckoned that Jesus, yeah, right.
Yeah, and there was another guy before him that had written a lot of books as well, that this guy the German guy, the Russian guy had based his information on. So, well, not in, but he'd gotten a lot of it from. And then he just looked up, compared it to known history or, conventional history, and it doesn't match up. Like in Pompeii, did I mention that earlier? Like Pompeii is mentioned in it's on a couple of maps, and it's in great detail. It's on an Italian map. and when they say it was in the 1600s, but Pompeii was supposed to have sunk in the.
Well, they've just lied about the history, haven't they? Because they had to make it look like we were here longer than we've actually been here, or that something else was here, and then they changed it when they came in.
Yeah, well, what these guys are suggesting is that Tartaria split into two fractions.
That would make sense. Like I say, I reckon the Ottoman Empire might have been the other half of Tartaria. Because that had masses of land, masses of people, was always conquering and everything. So I reckon that was the other. It wasn't the Ottoman Empire. It was Tartaria Part 2.
See, the Mongols. They're saying the Mongols aren't like the Chinese. Like Genghis Khan never happened, and we picture them to be giant, huge sort of barbarian people. But it says they weren't. They were red-haired.
Yeah, that's what James is bringing up, that Jesus would have had red in his hair if he was a person.
Well, I don't know. They have Jesus.
He was talking about that on our Hangout the other day.
I don't know much of Europe and all. I'm not very good with countries, but I forget where they said they thought it was. But they reckoned Egypt was it wasn't like the center of where everybody lived. It was a place they chose to bury the kings because nobody lived there. It was remote, and it was a good place to, hoard all their.
They didn't mind. You know what? For what we're saying, though, you're saying that, but they sure didn't mind travelling in the old days, did they? Then, if you think that they had, look at the ships they've got with sails, but these people were travelling everywhere.
Well, they were talking about like everybody had free energy.
Oh, is that the tunnel underneath the? You know that there's a tunnel that's miles long underneath the.
Yeah.
It's underneath the pyramids. Brian. Oh, I've forgotten his surname now. Damn. Brian, elongated headed Brian. He's been down there. So maybe that tunnel was a train, the underground train,
or a canal taken by boats on the water, perhaps, even, or maybe a bit of both, depending where you were in the world. Maybe you swapped from one to the other.
I know, but that's the saddest bit, is we can't really put it all together. We've just got myths and ideas. I thought it was really strange when they're uncovering that parts of the buildings are underneath the roads and that. And then when they dig up, there's a window under there, and the window hasn't even gone rotten. The window's still there. It's in the black. I just find these things really strange, I just do. Like, we have got so much that we don't know, and even if it's important to be in the present and to go to the future, I just think our past is so important. We don't know who we are and where we've come from. That's what I think. I'm quite interested in that Tartaria side. It just, it just doesn't make sense that it could be thousands of years old when we're living in the buildings now, and they all look Roman.
Yeah, it's. I find it hard to work out what the hell is going on.
I mean, don't you? In Australia itself, I remember it from you and Owen, that it's a bit like you've just got there, and within a year there's a great big cathedral, which would have taken years to build. It's there with whatever it is. It's there in a very short period of time.
Oh, they cleared land and built whole cities, and you think, well, hang on. In a 30-year span, you had to not only clear the trees, clear the land, you then had to flatten it. You then had to build a lumber mill, a steel. You had to build all these mills to create the materials to even bloody build with in the first place. And then there's only 200,000 people or 50,000 people in the whole of Australia for the first 50 years or whatever. It's like,
I don't even understand this bit about Ireland. When we were going to America in the 1800s, supposedly their crops failed. Someone said this mist came in, and it was there for 3 days, and then when the mist cleared, all the crops had died. And the Irish was probably the more poorer side, but you could grow potatoes, and you could live off potatoes, and that's what they did. But they were a bit poorer, but it killed the whole potato thing, and then half of Ireland packed up and went to America, and then became into the quarantine, and then your children taken. I mean, it's all just horrific, isn't it? Like, everything's miserable. And what it is that's not. I'm not saying that's when I talk about this history, and I say we were quarantined and all that. I'm saying that's what I see. That's what I see happened. And Hitler did it.
Yeah.
He destroyed all the Tartaria buildings and he took the adults and took the children again. He was doing what they were doing. He was continuing to do it. And now we don't even know if Hitler's real. They just put films up for him. Oh, look, there's Hitler. Oh, look, there's Winston Churchill. Oh, look, there's all these people just like they're doing now.
And the thing with these guys is that they destroy any other version of history. They don't just, like, hoard it. They destroy it. And so these guys were saying, so if we open up the Vatican, will we find the truth? And you're going, I think you'll just find repeat copies of the fake history. It's probably where they store it all to.
I mean, everybody. Rome's got the biggest telescope in the world. What the hell would Rome want the biggest telescope? They're into Jesus, aren't they? But oh no, they're into the stars instead.
And they call it Lucifer.
I know, isn't that terrible? It's just we're living the most weirdest place ever. When you start working it out, you realise that nothing adds up. Nothing. I mean, if you think, like, I remember Martin Leakey doing one, and what it was is he's got these documents which say they're like the 1700s, and they'd mapped out the nervous system of a human. I mean, it's almost impossible with the technology that they had, that they'd be able to do that. And you think,
yeah,
well, how did they do it then? But I did come across this old etching, and it looked old, and it looked like I don't know, 1700s, and it looks like they've got a great big, you know, the things in the 1800s. There's one of those in the garden, but instead of it being small, it's huge, you know, like a pylon size in the garden. I only found it once. I did film it, but it's on a video somewhere. But I was like, look at that. And I was thinking, how do we know anything? Because, you know, if you go back and look up history, you get to the 1800s, you've got photographs, but before that, it's all paintings. Nothing else but paintings and drawings. Nothing else. No, I can't explain it. You know, like, well, there wouldn't be photographs, but you can't go back and look because it's only paintings and drawings.
Yeah.
Can't seem to wait to do a painting of a horse and a cart, you know, something like that. Or, I don't know, there's the highwayman, dun-dun-dun-dun, he's coming to get you, that kind of thing. You find hundreds of those things. But
some of the paintings are so detailed, though, it's like...
Well, yeah, look at the sea. That was one thing that got me. I was going to do this video of this great big mansion house with these really high ceilings, and all the ceilings were painted. And you think, how the hell did they do all that? Like, I'm not saying they couldn't have done it with stuff, and they probably had stuff, but you're like...
It's probably a print. Because they had the technology to print. Same as we do now. It's probably just a sheet that they printed out and stuck on the wall like wallpaper. I don't know.
Well, thanks for that one, Gillian. But doesn't it seem really strange? Something big must have happened, because instead of being more sort of futuristic, we're not. And I mean, we were talking on the other hangout about the petrification. I mean, that's pretty quick if animals were in, like, walking and they went... But, I mean, that's like Methuselah kind of stuff. But I have a feeling something like that happened. I just do. But maybe they were electrical arkings. Remember I told you about those? If you look on Google Maps, I haven't found the hangout with that one. I'd like to stick that one back on when I come across it. Basically, when electrical arcing went into the ground, the positive entrance would be trees growing there. And the negative, you've got irons and ores where they mine. But these things could be small or quite big, and I think Avebury's built on a electrical arcing, and so is Stonehenge. They're electrical arkings. Anyway, these things were happening, and some of them were huge. But if they were happening, you'd have been evaporated. That had been it. It'd have been worse than a nuclear bomb. You're gone. But these things were petrified but we don't know whether they made them. You know, like you said. Well, cities found in the sea or whatever it is, they could just be they could just be sets from before. That's what
there's things like Mount Vesuvius or whatever it was that wiped out Pompeii. That brought clouds over the sky or smoke, you know, for a year or two, and that killed.
Yeah, that fits in. I remember watching this documentary years ago, and what it was, as they were explaining, was that at some point there'd been an imploding volcano, but we'd gone from this big hourglass down to this about 500 people, and then we zoomed out again. something happened, something big happened to us, but it didn't put a date on it.
Well, the thing is, though, it never came. I don't know. I don't know where Mount Vesuvius is. Is it in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere? But either way, it didn't affect the southern hemisphere. It only affected the northern hemisphere, and I find that a bit odd. And it was also around the same time as a comet was going through the sky. There's often comets mentioned when there's disasters. I'm not sure if that's a natural thing of, nature, or was that weapons, machinery. I don't know. Like Napoleon, they describe him as if he's a comet.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you can't say, yes, and you can't prove it because we can't go back.
Well, no, because they've written so many lies.
You've got the
And then-
Doomsday
and it's not so
Book,
much
you've
that
got burning of all the
everybody's,
books, what all that. Like, wow.
Like someone was saying to me yesterday, when you go and do, writing at school, at uni, there'll be a day when they say, right, we're going to pretend we're Greek philosophers. So everybody dresses up in Greek things and they talk about Greek stuff and they eat Greek food and then write stories as if were living in the times. I mean, and that's basically how you do it. You just get people to do that, and then you palm that off a few years later as being real recorded truth, an experience of something. You can see
Well, we know that
done.
something's off, and then, like Martin Leakey showed us pictures where you'd have towns and they'd have a pyramid on the side of it. I mean, the towns weren't the same era as the pyramid, but there was always towns next to the pyramids.
That's why I don't think some things are so local, some of these events are so local, even though they try to say it affected the whole world, I don't think they did. I think most of this stuff was local, which to me suggests there's more technology.
And don't forget, England is something in it. Greenwich Mean Time's here. I actually used to clean Greenwich Mean Time. I've actually cleaned it. It was this. I can't remember if it was grey or green. It was probably a little bit higher than to my waist, and it was something that was about as long as this room, so about 10 foot long and about, I don't know, maybe not quite as long as 10 foot, but it was something like that, and it was about, I don't know, about 4 foot wide. It had a little tiny clock on it, and it's set. I dusted it, but it used to be with the Hurstmont Zoo observatories, which have gone now. They've gone abroad, but it's set about a minute behind, and we don't know if they moved it either, but it isn't there anymore. But that's where it was in the 80s. It was there in Hurstmont Zoo. Just a little box, well, a big box, just a box. Nothing nice about it. It didn't say, we're the clock of the world, or everything starts from me. Just this sort of box in a metal thing with a little clock on it. Nobody was there except us cleaning. And it does have one of those delay things on, supposedly if anything goes wrong, then they've got that delay thing. Obviously they can put a message out. Oh, do you remember that when we thought it was nuclear bombs? Oh, God. It's just terrible, isn't it? Yeah, it's a bit hard to know when it started, because you can probably go back to great-grandparents, a lot of us, even if they're pictures. But when you were little, your parents and your grandparents would have been talking about them. But after that, you can't really go back any further, can you? Because you didn't see it.
Well, I've got my great-grandmother's memoirs, and so she was born at the end of the late 1800s. But she doesn't mention anything like that in her memoir. I mean, there's only 20 pages, so there's not a lot there. They're like farmers, but on their property they actually have railway line that's just their own, and they're just for them to move produce around the farm. And they're making their own butter and all sorts of things. And I just thought,
well, I find it really strange in that time
really
period.
Rich.
That's your grandmother's time. That nobody talked about Spanish flu.
Great-grandmother.
None of them spoke about Spanish flu. We had the suffragettes, and at the same time, just before they come in, is Spanish flu, and no one mentions nothing about nothing.
Well, how's this? In the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, my great-grandmother's family was sending apples to Germany on ships.
They seem so well organised. You just imagine.
They were nobodies. Like, I just find that amazing.
You just imagine that they're like horse and cart and they can't do anything. But, you know, this is what I was saying was really strange about Brighton. You know, we've got this beautiful palace which looks very Tartarian. And it almost looks like a mosque, but they've turned it into, they say it's a palace. And then they've got this pier which turns up in sort of just, maybe not 1860s. And what it is it's half a suspension bridge, and they managed to burrow it into the rock to anchor it. And you're like, really? And then it's got thousands of tons of marble on it. And you're going, really? And at the same time they go, someone else writes a bit of history and they say, well, due to the fact we didn't have roads and due to the fact it was very difficult, you know, being able to bring provisions for these people in Brighton. And you're thinking, really? They bought tons and tons and built half a suspension bridge into the wall. Like, they managed to do that. I can't imagine it's that difficult bringing coal. And then you've got, like, the first aquarium in the world. It had an Eden project. There's just so many things. And then in the 1800s or just before, all these windmills turned up. I looked up this, it was on a video I've got, I might have to re-upload that as Tartaria, but it showed you the windmills. And say there was 500 windmills in England. Well, 300 of them were around Brighton, so it must have been flooded, and that's how they got the water out, was with the windmills. It's just.
Well, I think we had a world before that had a lot of technology compared to now, and I think, yeah, there was a fight. I don't think it was natural disasters. I think it was technology that was used, and I don't think either side is particularly good, but I think the worst of the two sides are in control at the moment.
Well, I'm pretty sure that they give each other messages. And I mean, like this one today on High Impact when he's going, Charles goes something like, the blue-brown. And you're like, whatever colours he said. You think, well, what does that mean? Is that a code word for everybody? And then...
See, I do think there's a group of people who want the technology to be free for everybody to use. But there's a group of people who don't, who want to be in control of it, and only hand it out to those that they want to. And I think it's both a monetary thing, you know, so that they can gain this superiority over everybody, as well as this technology shouldn't be in certain people's hands because they do stupid things with it. So I think it's a combination of things. I'm not sure.
Well, wouldn't we like to know?
Mostly I would say it's money and greed.
And then you've got, like, you know, in 1830-something, there's no plans, there's no nothing. They built a front onto Buckingham Palace, and the bit behind that is beautiful. And there are pictures in that. But then, at this time, it wasn't half a palace, but it's getting on for half a palace is built at the front. And yet, there's no... In 1911, they were doing some work on it, and you're thinking, is that when they put the actual other bit of the palace on? And they've lied about the history. It wasn't Victoria's time. It was 1911. You can't prove any of this stuff anymore. We're at such a loss.
It is such an ugly palace because I've been to Buckingham Palace, and of all the buildings around the world, it's not stunning at all.
And there used to be a pyramid there. They got rid of a pyramid there. I found these plans that Windsor Castle is the same as Buckingham Palace, and they both had. Well, Windsor Castle still got its pyramid, but there used to be one at Buckingham Palace, and they got rid of it. It's just all the stuff that they would have got rid of that we wouldn't have seen. That would have, if we'd seen it, you know, it was going to be more like, you know, the world fairs, and then Tesla time, and then it just blew up. You know, the whole thing burnt down. It would have been more like that. We'd have been covered in that. It's like we're in crystal or something. You know, you get a tea set and it's all beautiful and it's like we're in a tea set with all this sort of history around us, but a lot of it's gone. And I think that's what the First and Second World Wars were about, destroying it so the people didn't see it. Imagine if all that had been left. We'd been going, there's masses of it. How could they, like, the towns would have been Tartaria. Or the buildings, those buildings. And that's why they had to knock most of them down.
Yeah, but what they can't change and use. And then the world sounds like it became very militarized. Like they said, they split into 10 fractions, like 10 groups, 10 hordes and became very militarized, the whole planet.
Well, that picture, do you remember I was telling you just before we put the button on it, about the one that Billy gave me when all those people were standing there in the room and they all had those headdresses on? That looked quite military. There was loads of, like, Russians there and, I don't know.
Yeah. And I've been thinking that for a while, all these underground cities. And it's even like now, we have great technology, but there's no way that me and 10 mates could go build an underground city. Yet they claim that people with, stones and no shovels did it hundreds, thousands of years ago. Whereas I think it's military. All these underground cities are leftover military bases from whatever happened last time. Bunkers, and bunkers and things like that. And I'd love to know what's under the earth. How much shit they're putting under there.
Well, I struggle with that as well. I mean, I get on really well with Marie Wheatley. I've told you this. She's nice. She's not a flat earther or anything, but she knows that things are wrong. And, she's found some elongated headed people not that far from me. And she lives about an hour away from me. And she constantly talks about, when they did those carbon testings and they went down and, that's Bronze Age and that's that long ago. And I don't see that happening. We are living in the same places that the Victorians did. A layer of silt hasn't come along and gone on top, has it? It's ridiculous. They're lying about those carbon things. But there is stuff down there. Like I've seen where they're showing you this palace, which is sort of in this sand rock, and it's beginning to sort of crumble, like the elements have got to it. And underneath there's a palace.
And I wonder how many generations.
And look what they built in Jordan, in the stone. Look what they did there in the stone, and they carved out all this great. How the hell would they have been able to have done that?
And how did they manage to turn it into fiction?
One second, I'm going to put a picture of that up just to remind people. Hang on. Yeah, we've got this place. This is just, how would they have been able to have done that? And why are they building it in stone? It's like a whole city was there, out there in the middle of nowhere. Do you know which place I'm talking about? Petra.
No, but if you had Geopolymer, you could do it easily. If you could turn stone soft, if you could melt stone.
Inside the tiger caves. They're just amazing. Like, there's a whole city, like, in rock. Well.
And a machine had to have done it.
Yeah. I just think that place is huge in there. Anyway,
even those presidents' heads on Mount Rushmore in America.
I brought that up. There's something wrong with them as well.
I think that someone went up there and carved it by hand. It's hysterical. And when you see his little version of it, it is just bloody dreadful. The one that he actually made himself. Oh my God! I wonder who they were. They weren't American.
What's the ones in Turkey, Trouble? That you've got those. I forget what they're called now. And they're funny shapes where you can see like it melted. I'll put Turkey caves. Maybe that will show me. I can't remember. Everybody will know when they see it. Just having a look. Just turning the page to see. Oh, there they are. Yeah, there they are. The cave dwellings of Cappadocia. There's another place which is kind of the same. These look like things have melted. They're very like steeples, but they're not steeples, but they're all pointing up. I mean, there's that place there. That's in Turkey. It's hard to know what we're living in, isn't it, really? We're just living in something else. I don't know what it is. We don't have an explanation. We want to know more. Please, sir, I want more. But this place looks like it's melted to get to look like that. Something happened and it kind of melted, but who knows? And also, oh, I forgot what I was going to say now. I turned the record button off. Oh, I just think these things are just... It's just incredible, really. Like, what is all this? What are we in? Any more thoughts, Trouble? We've been going probably for a bit of time now. Any thoughts? Go, sorry.
Well, what happens if we work it out and we find out that it's all a construct? We can, we can create any, we can build anything. The Earth's like plasticine, it's our toy. We can have, we can hook up to the Neuralink computer and have eternal life. And are we going to choose all that stuff, or are we going to go, you know what, we need to crash it again and let it, this is natural, and not let the control system take over?
I'm trying to get to the burial chambers of Turkey, the catacombs, and it brings up, I put cat in and it brought up all these cats.
It's catacomb.
Yeah.
So,
there you go.
yeah, and it's just time.
Yeah, I'm just showing them now the catacombs in Turkey, and they look very like the Jordanian ones we just looked at. Looks the same, all these pillars and built into the rock. It's the same thing, and that's in Fethiye. Now, they will tell you stories of how they wanted the souls to be released, and that originally there would have been water, so the souls would, they would go off over the water. But there's no water there now. Well, not there, there isn't. So the water must have been higher then, if the water reached there and the souls went out. But sometimes these catacombs, they're not near water. I don't understand that. I mean, I've been to these catacombs in Fethiye.
Well, unless they can tap into water underground, because I know all of Australia is pretty much sitting on, what do they call them? They're not aqueducts, basins, water basins. We're on like about 10 different water basins. And when you look it up, it's just not a piece of the country doesn't have water under it, fresh water.
Yeah.
I don't teach it at school. When I saw the water basin map of Australia, I'm like, are you kidding me? I thought there was only like 2. They only talk about 2, but the whole place sits on water. I don't know what it looks like as you go out from there.
I'd like to know how we were made. We're quite unique, even as human beings. We can think, see, feel, eat, walk, talk, cuddle, whatever it is all together in multi-dimensional fashions. We don't hear our food digest, our hearts beating away, etc., etc. I just think we're amazing beings.
I think what makes us different is that we can imagine. I don't know how many other animals can use imagination. I don't think
we're not very
I think they're all
imaginative then, are we? Because we've got all this history and we can't work it out.
I can imagine heaps of different things. I'm just not sure which one.
Well, we've been going for a bit of time. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Trouble?
No, it was just that video was, like I said, it was just good to see different people looking into the same sort of things.
Yeah, so I advise
Coming up.
everybody, I've already put up the Hangout for this. It's the tin foil hat with Sam Tripoli.
Tripoli.
So, yeah, that's the channel, Tripoli. And obviously I think I'm going to look up what it says. The title's called The Roman Empire Never Existed and All History Before the 1500s is a Lie. So that makes about sense. And I've always said we're only about 400 or 500 years old. You just got this feeling because of the way things happen. So I agree with these people with my findings and my research. I feel that that's what it is. We are not that old.
Yes. And the fact that there's been a book or two written with somebody actually published things, so it's not just a wild conspiracy sort of thing, like well, where did you get that from? And you've put a heap of really weird information together. It's like, no, I haven't. And look, see, somebody else has even spotted it, and they've written books about it. So, yeah.
It's really weird. It just reminded me of this sort of, sometimes when you get to Brighton, you can get a kind of, although it's an etching or a drawing, they've kind of done it as if you're looking down at Brighton. And Brighton looks like a sort of, the whole town was quite square, and all the Regency houses in it, but it looks like a palace. It just looks like a palace and grounds. Brighton was a palace and grounds. But they've kind of tried to do it from above, and you think, how the hell could they in those days have got that kind of vision? How would they know it looked like that?
See, healing centres, when you're going to war and that, even like my friend was saying, they had to have thousands of horses, which means you have to feed the horses, and like, I don't know. So you would have needed healing centres, like hospitals we would call them, but theirs would actually heal you. I don't know, but it's interesting.
Yeah, and it might get you feeling like you're a footstep nearer to it, the final outcome.
The only thing that makes sense is that we were more advanced in the past than we are now. Or different kind of advanced. And it's just time the experts either started getting their shit together and changing it, or the rest of us just said, no, called them out. It's just utter bullshit. And that they get taught all this crap at school, in uni and that. And it's just a lie. And they can't, Egypt can't say, well, we need to keep our tourism alive because the whole world's crashed. Nobody has tourism anymore. That's not a good enough excuse.
Well, I definitely don't get much this year, do they, anybody? Because we've not been able to move.
That's right. So
and we're still in the damn lockdown. And in fact, now you can't have anybody come round your house and all that. It's just disgusting what they've done.
Could you imagine what people would build if they knew about geopolymer, man-made concrete? You'd have things like Cryle Castle or Crystal Palace or whatever the hell it's called. And people would be building amazing things. You would have, I don't know.
I know, the imagination flies, doesn't it, Trouble?
Yeah, see, you can only have rulers by them controlling all of this stuff.
Well, they're going in for this massive push down right now. It's quite awful. Especially as being run by computer programs right now. Anyway, Trouble?
It's going to backfire on them because everyone now has time to look into stuff that they never would have even considered.
Well, that's if they could find it, and that's why they changed the whole of the search engines on YouTube. So in that time off, no one could look up and it goes, oh look, hoax. They took all that out.
But it's not spreading that way anymore. It's spreading by word of mouth and by.
No, but I'm saying if say COVID-19 had happened a year ago, May it was. you would have still found all the search engines to get to maybe Flat Earth, to get to whatever it was, you know, that 9/11 wasn't right. But now if you put in, say you want to put hoax 9/11, they just bring up all these stories that are not real anyway. You can't find that bit anymore. You know, those videos are there sometimes, but you have to put in the whole name of the video, otherwise you can't find it. Because they're not in the search. And they flatlined my channel. They flatlined loads of channels, unless you were painting nails or something like that. I don't mean that rudely to them. I just mean, as long as you weren't looking into the truth.
It's getting really boring. It's just the same shit over and over again. It's like, come on, I'm subscribed to over 500 channels. Why are you only giving me the choice of 8 and half of them I'm not even subscribed to?
Well, at the moment, every time I get a few subs, YouTube take them off. That's how they stop a channel growing. But anyway, Trouble, on that note, Trouble just wanted to bring your attention to this hangout and that other people are talking about Tartaria, which is brilliant. She's been a right good what do you call it? You're a very good reporter.
Thank you.
Yeah, and much appreciate everything you say, Trouble, and it blew your mind a bit, didn't it?
Oh yeah, I got excited when I was listening to it. Like they're saying things like Geopolymer, and I'm like, yes, because I haven't heard hardly anyone talk about that. And then it will pop, and that Genghis Khan didn't exist. I'm like, yes, because it's just unrealistic that anyone could take.
Joey Rocker talks about that. We had a hangout with him a few months ago about the fact that the stones were made there, and also we had Angel Geezer, who I put his videos up on Sun and Moon. He also said the same thing. I've been saying that from the beginning.
But I didn't realise Pompeii, that you can literally prove that Pompeii is not in the historical timeline that they mention.
It's awful, isn't it? Because, you know, in our timeline it was.
Yes.
Just as well. I don't know what it is, why some of us are awake and some of us aren't, Trouble. But I'm glad that you are, because it's always a joy having a hangout with you.
Thank you, same.
Yeah, we're good friends. Me and Trouble talk a lot. Anyway, Trouble.
Yes, I can't talk about this stuff with anybody.
Yeah, only me. No, I'm only joking. You talk to other people as well, I'm sure. But it's always good to have a chat with you. And yeah, we'll be back and do it again.
Okay.
Anyway, Trouble. Thank you very much. The foil hat with Sam, etc. And chat room.